Regular viewers of Peckforton Light Railway videos and visitors to my blog will know that mineral traffic is the mainstay of services on the railway and provides the principal rationale for the line's existence. In this video, I will try to provide more context and an overview of how mineral traffic and its resources have evolved since the railway first came to life in 2006. Peckforton Light Railway is an imagined 3-foot narrow gauge railway which might have been constructed at the end of the 19th century to serve the communities alongside the Peckforton Hills in Cheshire and the copper mines which were dug into the hillside. These mines date back to Roman times and were actively mined up until the start of the 20th century, when they no longer became viable. In my imagined history, a new rich seam of copper was discovered, and the mines became productive enough to warrant the building of the railway. Some of the mine workings are still visible, but the shafts have been long filled in, and the land reclaimed by nature. My history has decided that Lord Tolmash, who owned Peckforton Castle and much of the land along Peckforton Hills, stipulated that all spoil from the workings had to be removed, in addition to the ore. Fortunately, at the time of my railway, the sea defences along the Dee estuary not far away were being reinforced, and so I decided that that would be the destination for the many trainloads of spoil which were being removed from the mines. The copper mine came into existence in 2008, 2 years after the construction of the railway began. As you can see, it was built into the laurel hedge at the edge of the garden. I quickly began laying hands on suitable stock, an LGB toy train diesel loco, and a mixture of LGB and Heartland Loco Works tippler wagons. Space was cramped in the 2 sidings originally provided for the copper mine, but ore and spoil trains quickly became established in each day's running session. Comparing my track plan with the real location for features on the line's route, I realised that the positioning of the copper mine wasn't geographically correct. To complete the illusion, there ought to be a branch line leading to it between Buchley and Bickerton, and so I decided to add an extra loop, just outside Buchley station, to give the impression there was actually a branch line leading to the copper mine. I really enjoy the civil engineering involved in landscaping the garden for my railway, and so the branch line was completed within a weekend. Copper ore trains could now correctly access the copper mine in a geographically correct way. Of course, the LGB toy train loco was a bit garish and chunky for a 1930s British-based narrow gauge railway, and so I decided to bash the model into something more suitable. I hunted around for an appropriate 3-foot gauge prototype but drew a blank. Eventually, I opted for a compromise between a 2-foot gauge and a standard gauge Fowler loco from the 1930s. It was my first attempt at scratch-bash building. A bit rough and ready, but it satisfied me, and I felt it looked right. Well, a damn sight better than the toy train loco anyway. You may have noticed that the skip wagons have, by now, been painted and weathered. I opted to standardise on LGB tipplers, and so abandoned the Heartland versions, though, as we shall see later, they eventually do make a reappearance. I ended up with 2 rakes of 9 wagons. One rake was left empty, and the other loaded with crushed local sandstone. The full wagons are swapped with the empties via a hidden link to the copper mine from Beeston Market Station. I felt that one diesel loco wasn't really enough to handle the ore traffic, and so, when an IP Engineering Jessie loco turned up on eBay for a reasonable price, it joined the fleet. It was one of my first proper battery locos, and so very quickly became equipped with radio control. After a while, I discovered why it had been sold with a spare gearbox. Three gearboxes later, I replaced what was supplied with a USA Trains motor block with extended axles for the fly cranks. It's now one of my most reliable runners. You will have noticed that up to this point, there is a distinct lack of infrastructure at the copper mine. After hunting around on the internet for suitable pictures, and finding very few, I designed my own low-relief structures to act as a backdrop to the copper mine sidings. I used a variety of techniques to finish off the buildings, to experiment with construction methods. To my mind, they give the impression that business must be thriving. There is a loading hopper, a crusher shed, offices, and a workshop. You may also have spotted that a workman's coach was a very early acquisition. This was another second-hand eBay purchase. I think it's either a very early IP engineering kit or a scratch build. It's very rudimentary, but over the years I've grown attached to it. It was given passengers in the form of very rough hand-carved wooden figures who were seated inside, and then the coach given a coat of dull brown paint. The coach always features in the first down and the last up ore train of each running session. The original cramped set of sidings at the mine were revamped in 2015 to add another loop and a bit more space. It also separated the main line quite distinctly from the mine sidings. At the same time, the original GN15 feeder railway was replaced with a short length of 32mm track and a loco, plus a few skip wagons as well. The loco makes use of the Deltang receiver's ability to provide a shuttle service, triggered by magnets at each end of the line. The track at the mine has been ballasted several times over the years. I like to try and replicate the sort of gravelly surface often found at industrial sidings like these. Also, you may have noticed that various resident robins have taken an interest in the railway during its existence. During the lockdowns in 2020, I revised the layout at Buchley Station, and in so doing, altered the approach to the copper mine branch. This has provided more space at the station, allowed for the inclusion of the boneworks, and improved the junction with the branch line, giving more visibility to drivers waiting to join the main line from the branch. And so I hope I have given a flavour of the way in which the copper mine facilities and traffic have evolved over the years. But of course that's not the end of the story. We must now turn our attention to the other type of mineral carried by Peckforton Light Railway: sand. In 2018, a new siding was added to the railway just outside Bickerton Station to serve what would become the sand quarry. There are numerous sandpits shown on Ordnance Survey maps of the Peckforton Hills and surrounding area. The seams of copper ore are found embedded in outcrops of sandstone, which are a feature of the hills, and so it's inevitable that deposits of sand are also quite common. I decided that this could provide yet another source of traffic for the railway. Firstly, the railway would need some suitable wagons to transport the sand, and so the chassis of various Heartland Loco Works mini-series wagons, including the abandoned skips mentioned earlier, were hacked about and plastic hard bodies added to produce a rake of hopper wagons reminiscent of those found on the Snail Beach and District railways. Then loading hoppers would be needed on the quarry siding to top up the wagons. Another internet search proved to be unsuccessful, and so I designed and produced my own using foam board and plastic hard. An embankment behind the hoppers was furnished with a short length of 32mm gauge track to enable the hoppers to be topped up by wagons from the sand quarry itself, located somewhere out of sight of the railway and out of sight of my garden. The wagon loads are removable, so wagons can travel loaded up the line and unloaded back down to the sand quarry. The sand quarry and its trains proved to be a great addition to the line. However, the site was a bit cramped, which limited the length of trains which could be accommodated. Also, the siding had no run-round loop, and so sand trains had to be taken to Peckforton station for running round. Although this made for interesting running, it was sometimes a bit inconvenient. So, in 2023, a decision was made to extend the siding and link it to the main line near Peckforton station. This provided ample room for a run-round loop, and also a short siding. Operating sand trains is now a lot easier, though I still have to work out a way to replenish the loading hoppers, as the feeder railway is now quite a long way away. So, this brief overview of mineral traffic on Peckforton Light Railway has shown how copper mining has always provided the backbone for traffic on the railway, and how, more recently, the transportation of sand has been incorporated. During running sessions, ore and sand trains are slotted into the timetable as and when needs arise. It certainly makes the railway a bit more interesting, especially as mineral trains will occasionally have other wagons added to carry explosives, fuel oil, pit props, coal and machinery needed by the mine and the quarry.